Welcome back to Conversational Frame Control. Here's a clip from the Joe Rogan podcast with Adam Conover. And I'll point out how Adam makes a few embarrassing mistakes. And it's common in conversations. You'll see this, and it can cause you to lose the frame quickly and lose credibility in the eyes of anyone in the room. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what happened and what to do instead to command respect and authority when you speak.
We've gone through it. It is really back, and it is big. But no, we did one on alpha males. We did an episode about dating, and we did one on how the idea of the alpha male doesn't exist in humans. Like if you talk to any anthropologist, any biologist, any sociologist, right, and be like, are humans organized in a social relationship where there's alphas and betas? They'll be like, no, what are you talking about? This is an unscientific idea, right? And we just did something laying that out in the context of like people who are, oh, my type is I like alphas, right? Well, there's no such thing actually, humans are you're dominant in some situations, not in others, right? It's an overly simplistic way of looking at human relationships. And I thought that was a pretty simple, straightforward thing. I was like, this is just a bit of pseudoscience that you hear people tossing out. And people went ballistic on the internet because people have sort of like built a edifice of ideology in their minds about like, there's alphas, there's betas. I'm an alpha. This is what an alpha's like. This is what a beta's like.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's take away the words.
Yeah,
they're clearly men who are more aggressive and athletic and dominant and more confident, and then men who are introverted and shy and more nervous and anxious. And there's a scale
in some situations,
social situations.
Yeah,
and that's what we're talking about, right?
In social, but your social situation could change based on what situation you're in. You know what I mean?
They could, but like an athletic, confident male is always going to be an athletic, confident male, and an introverted, anxious male who has problems with social anxiety is going to be the same. That's who that person is.
I don't think so necessarily. But so when we're talking about alphas, right? Mm-hmm. In animals, what is that? It's a social hierarchy, right?
In animals.
So they're arguing about two things here. Adam is challenging the idea that there's a scientific basis for a socially constructed trait that's found in some men that would sort people into a hierarchy. And what Joe is saying is that it's more a set of traits, mostly biological, or a set of behaviors. So even though both involve the same label, they're talking about different definitions and a different standard for the concept of an alpha male. So they're talking past each other a bit here, at least at the beginning of this interview. And this is important to note because we can often find ourselves in a debate about two different things, even though they share the same label.
So let's take away that word. I mean, what people are using to describe when they're saying alphas and betas, they're saying like confident, strong, secure people and people that are anxious and not confident.
So if you're trying to say, hey, like it's good to be confident, it's not so great to be anxious. Like that's fine, right? Mm-hmm. But when people talk about alpha males and beta males, right? They're specifically bringing in the language of like evolution, of biology, of zoology, of evolutionary psychology, And they'll start saying stuff like, well, there's alphas and there's betas and women are hardwired to be attracted to the alpha, because that's what it's like in nature. Like they'll be using that language, right? And so what we're pointing out is that's not scientific, right?
It's not scientific, but it is true that women are hardwired to be attracted to confident, athletic men.
I don't know if I agree with that. But
really?
Yeah.
You don't think that women look at like pro athletes and like big, strong, athletic men, and you don't think they're drawn to that for evolutionary reasons?
No, I don't actually. I think that.
Okay, do you think that men are drawn to women with small waists and big hips and large breasts for evolutionary reasons?
I think that's an easy. I think what that is that's an easy intuition to come to if you're like looking at the way people behave, right? But one of the things about evolutionary psychology is it's the most common mistake to look at the way that people do behave and say the reason we behave that way is because evolution says that's the best way, right? That's their argument. For instance, I'll give you an example. That's the argument arguments like that were used, for instance, to justify slavery, right? That like, oh, because whites and blacks have this hierarchical relationship in American society, that's the way it was intended. That's how nature intended it to be, right? But we can't.
That's a giant leap. We're just talking about like the shapes of bodies. Like men universally are attracted to a certain shape of bodies. There's men that are attracted to different ones, and
I don't think men are universally attracted to the same
People vary,
body.
but that hourglass shape has been throughout time something that men are attracted to.
I think that hourglass shape is something throughout our recent cultural memory that we tell each other that men are attracted to, right? That's what we're told from an early age to this is the sort of women that men are attracted to, and so a lot of men end up adopting that, right? But I don't think that deep down that's how men naturally are.
Really?
Yeah, I read
That's
this.
So Adam doubts the idea that humans are attracted to based on biology, right? He doubts this idea that things like hip size naturally or evolutionarily play the role in attraction. So we have two paradigms at odds here in this part of the debate, which is essentialism and constructivism, right? These are drives that are either man-made ideas or they're things of nature or evolution. And I point this out because it's good to learn how to spot when the paradigm you and another person have are just fundamentally different. And not being on the same page about the basis for attraction prevents agreement on the other issues that we're talking about here in the debate, right? Joe does a good job of noticing the fundamental disagreement, and he asks questions to understand where that disagreement begins with Adam.
But that doesn't make any sense to me. That's so non-intuitive.
But I'm all about things that are non-intuitive.
Where do you think it started? Where do you think this narrative of men being attracted to the woman with large breasts and a small waist and a big ass, where do you think that started? Because this is like evolutionary biology is pretty much settled on the idea that the reason why is the large hips would indicate that the woman would be easier to give birth. Having large breasts and a large ass would indicate that she has she's fertile, and then she has ample fat storage in the right places if she's going to be pregnant and carry children. There's all these like evolutionary biology reasons why people are attracted to certain things, and why a woman would be attracted to a tall, muscular, handsome man, good genetics, very strong and confident, can take care of her. All these things are based on evolutionary biology. So I don't understand why you think these are learned sort of cultural artifacts.
So my question is, this is an assumption that we, the public, make about how evolutionary biology works, right?
Well, it's more of a thing that we sort of agree on.
Well, we as the there's an idea among the public that this is true. I don't know if it's a scientific idea. That's my point.
I've had conversations with evolutionary biologists who explain the reason why men are attracted to certain shapes and why women are attracted to certain shapes. This is sort of, I mean, this is science. I mean, in a way, the reason why they're attracted to tall men that are muscular and confident is because that is what's always saved you throughout history. I mean, it totally makes sense, doesn't it?
Well, just because it makes the point of our show, right, is that just because something makes intuitive sense doesn't mean that it's necessarily true, right?
But don't you think that in this case that this is a varied argument? Like, I don't think that's something that you can dismiss.
I don't dismiss it, but I don't assume the truth of it simply because that's what everybody agrees upon, right?
But if you ask girls, like, what are you into? And you say, are you into tall, muscular, confident men who are also nice to you? Jesus Christ, it's going to be off the charts. It's going to be like most of them.
I'm really not sure that's the case.
Really?
Yeah.
You think you had like a survey of women, and if the men were equally kind and equally intelligent and friendly, you don't think that more women would be sexually attracted to these tall, handsome men with great bodies?
I mean, look, I'm not gonna say that. Like, first of all, you're positing like a value judgment in it that the bodies are great, right? So, like, are women attracted to attractive bodies? If that's the question, then I would say,
dad
of course,
bods are more attractive to women. Study finds some fucking guy with a dad bod.
Look, here's something that I was really influenced by.
What do you think of that? What I just said, though, that doesn't make sense to you that women would be attracted to someone who's fit?
Look, I mean, it's a hypothetical, right? Like, certainly athleticism, right, is something that is attractive, right? That's something that many people find attractive, right? Not everybody finds that attractive, and I don't think that we can necessarily reason backwards to like a specific evolutionary relationship, right? Because
So Adam seems to jump topics here, and Joe refocuses him quite smoothly, right? He asks him, "What do you think about what I said?" Very good tonality, very relaxed. It doesn't sound like he's bullying when he does that, or he's being too assertive, right? So what Adam does is he carves what Joe said down to something that is very narrow in its scope that he can't agree with, right? That athleticism is attractive, but not to all people. So before agreeing to some statement that sounds reasonable, don't be afraid to do like Adam does here and add clarification or nuance when needed before agreeing, right? If you find yourself being misunderstood often, this technique can help you to clarify your message for others. And Adam's clarified stance here is something that actually differs quite a bit from Joe's initial question to Adam, which included tall people. Adam says athleticism does not imply a rockin' body or genetic perfection, but he's simply saying, hey, this is somebody who takes care of oneself.
The truth of what those evolutionary relationships are is like often a lot more complicated than, you know, our immediate intuition about it. And what we're specifically pushing back against in that segment is like the really sort of unscientific, you know,
use of alpha and beta.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like, you know, you've got people, you know, just on internet forums, like sort of doing amateur pseudoscience, right? Saying like, this is how the relationships between men and women are like designed evolutionarily. And we were just pointing out on a very, very simple level, like the alpha and beta social hierarchy theory, right? That like humans are organized in a social hierarchy and alphas are above betas. Not true.
So the real issue here is it's very ugly to some people to say that attractiveness can be measured and tied to traits that are largely out of our control and have evolutionary advantages in social situations. And that's what Adam doesn't want to focus on here. His paradigm is that attraction and the alpha concept are ill-founded social constructions. They don't have a basis in evolution. And this is a problem from an optics perspective, from the way it's viewed by the audience, at least Joe's audience, maybe, because the norms that Joe is talking about sound very reasonable to many people. And he sounds authoritative, Joe does, when he's referring to his evolutionary psychology expert friends or people who've been on the show who agree with him. So Adam's actually being pushed on the other side of science here in this debate. It ends up he's losing a lot of credibility. So here he brings it back to his main message, which is one of his many attempts to shift back onto the original claims that his college humor video made. And the lesson here is be careful of how broad your claims are and what debate topics they open up. Stay within your core message and your core competency, and only make claims that you're willing to either substantiate or concede entirely, just give up entirely, or agree with the other person on. Because otherwise you risk losing your credibility, or you get into this long debate and it becomes apparent that you hold positions that are, you know, not really what you're trying to advocate for necessarily at any given time, right? So you maybe could argue that point. Adam maybe could have argued that point, but it really took him away from his central message, which was how interesting the college humor session was and some of the controversy around it. So sometimes it's strategic just to concede points that you don't care to argue so you can keep the frame fixed on your persuasive message, focus your debate energy on the things that are central to your persuasive message, and this laser-like focus of your message on the areas that you're competent in will command a lot of respect from those who hear you. So if you find this to be very interesting information or this video to be helpful, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel.